you may be sitting here and going, but like, I get what you're saying, Ryan. I get that you're saying that this is the expectation, that we are all crafted and we are formed and we have a call on our life. But I'm on the side of just experiencing all of those messages of shame that come against me and my worthiness to access and to rise up in my inheritance. And I'm dealing with that unworthiness and that feeling of normalizing living below capacity. What is it that I do? What is the revelation that I need? What is the experiential truth that I need to get, as you said, to get to that place where I'm not quite experiencing what I know that I should be experiencing in my relationship with Jesus? What is it that I should do? And as I said, there is nothing that you can do, but there is this beautiful revelation of Jesus that we can rest in. And I want to do that just for a minute today. And we talk about this when we talk about inheritance, Luke 15. Sometimes it's not how well you pursue God that changes your life. Sometimes it's how well he receives you when you're not pursuing him that truly changes and transforms our life. And so in Luke 15 is a story. It's the prodigal son story, and I won't go all the way into it this morning. But I want you to hear this story because it is a story about inheritance. And in this story, there is a son, and he comes to the father before the father is deceased. And he says, Father, I want my inheritance now. Many of you know this story, and I want us to, if you don't know this story, it's just a beautiful story that Jesus told me. He said, what is all of this about, Jesus? What is it? What's it really about? What's the Father's heart? What's the kingdom about? And Jesus told this story. He said there was a father who was very wealthy, and his son came to him and said, I want my inheritance now. I don't want to wait. This is great offense culturally that took place. And so he said to his son, yeah, you can have your inheritance now. And so his son took that inheritance and he squandered. He moved away, living amongst the enemies of his family and his people, and he squandered it all and he spent it all and all kinds of terrible things that are unmentionable in church because we don't say those things. They could be contagious. Doing all sorts of things, just living his life the way that he chose to live his life, as if his father was dead. Because he had his inheritance, he had his money, and he had what he wanted to do. And then eventually the money ran out. And as the money ran out, famine came across the land, and he got to the point where he couldn't work, couldn't do anything. All of his supposed friends that he was having such a great party with, they all said, oh, you're not as much fun anymore when you don't have all the money. We didn't really like you. It all goes away, and he is found just like going, I will take the worst of the worst jobs, and I will throw food to pigs, and then I will eat the food myself because I'm starving. And he comes in that pit of despair. He comes to that moment and goes, I'm going to go back to my father. And so he crafts this narrative in his mind of how he's going to come back to his father. And this is what he said. He wanted to say to his father, Father, I've sinned against you. I've taken what was yours. I've lived as if you were dead. I don't need to come back to you as a son. I just want to come back to you as a servant. And so he thinks this is a good story to tell. I will go back to my father and I'll tell him I'm just going to live as a servant. Remembering, as we're talking about inheritance, that he squandered his entire inheritance. He took it and wasted it and used it on nothing. And so he comes back and he's on his way to the Father, and Jesus is telling the story. And think about Jesus telling the story. This is not just a cool story that we tell. Think about Jesus telling this story. We say, Jesus, what is the Father like? What is the gospel? What is this good news? What is our relationship like? What is the kingdom like? This is the story that Jesus told. And it tells, the story goes on as this guy is coming back from this place of debauchery and failure and squandering. And it says, Jesus says, and the Father is there and he's watching the horizon for his son. He's every day he's out watching for his son to return, believing that his son would return. And as the son comes back into sight, it says that the Father runs to receive the son. And there's so much to unpack, even the reasons of why this father who is dignified and wealthy would run with his robes, would cover his son, would keep him from having to be addressed in shame and on the offense that he created within the community. All of these things that the Father did, that Jesus is telling them, this is how the Father sees you as you return back from the wasting of the inheritance, the mistakes you've made, the places where you would say, yeah, but you don't know why I'm not worthy. You don't know what this is or what that is. As I said, a lot of your spiritual journey and the gains that you make are not going to be determined by how well you pursue the Father. A lot of them are going to be seen in the revolution that takes place in your mind when you understand how the Father pursues you when you're at your worst. And when you're in the midst of those excuses and those things that pop up into your mind even today. And the Father runs to his Son and he puts a ring on his finger and he puts a robe on and puts sandals on his feet. And it all just represents the full reestablishment of a son with an inheritance, with a family, with a destiny, with a purpose. He wasn't saying, he starts to say, Father, I've sinned against you and I can come and just be a servant. And he establishes him fully in that moment in an embrace. And with a robe and with a ring and with sandals, he fully establishes him again as a son.